So I'm really excited to introduce both of our panelists today. First, we have Kevin Corbusier, who is a Villanova graduate with a BS in environmental science and geography, and then enjoyed his education at Villanova so much that he stayed on for a master's in sustainable engineering. So he has 2 degrees from Villanova. Kevin is currently working at Comcast and started working as an office sustainability intern while completing his master's, and then later moved into sustainability project specialist. Kevin works with the corporate sustainability team at Comcast, investigating and implementing new ways to reduce Comcast NBCUniversal's emissions and impact on the environment. Kevin's primary focus is on energy and electricity emissions reduction strategies. Sounds very interesting. Ryan Hagen is our second panelist. He is a Villanova graduate with a BA in economics and a minor in sustainability. Ryan started his career working at Enernoc, which I believe, I'm sorry, Ryan, I think they're actually changing their name, but I just left it as Enernoc right now.
All good. They're NLX now, I got bought up.
There you go. There you go. So what I can gather is they're a sustainable energy solutions company. And so Ryan worked with them as a sales analyst for a couple of years after graduation, but realized that he wanted to follow his passion and build a new communications tool, which is crowdsourcing sustainability, which he will explain in more detail. But the goal of crowdsourcing sustainability is to educate, connect, and ultimately unleash the power of people around the world to help reverse global warming. What started as an idea of how to express has now expanded into an information outlet that reaches over 100,000 people in more than 100 countries. The crowdsourcing team is made up of only 7 interns and Ryan, something I can definitely relate to as an office of 1 at Villanova. It's a tall order. Ryan's goal is to empower people so that we can build a healthier, safer, and more prosperous society together. So I really appreciate both of you taking the time to speak with us today. And I believe, Kevin, you're gonna kind of give your overview first. So
sure. All right, can you hear me? Okay. All right, let me share a couple slides here, 1 second. All right, everybody seen that okay? Okay, cool. All right, great. Well, Lisa just kind of gave this overview. So again, nice to see you all. I hope everybody's doing well. Again, thanks for having me and Ryan here tonight. Looking forward to hearing about how you are doing and sharing experiences on career, etc. So again, I'm Kevin. I'm a Villanova graduate, Villanova double graduate, like Lisa said, undergrad and the MSSE graduate program. And so again, like Lisa said, I did my undergrad in environmental sciences and geography, and then continued to stay and did my sustainable engineering master's, which was about 2 years, a little more. Started working as an intern at Comcast and finished it up while I was kind of doing both. So since interning, I ended up continuing to work for the team that got started there, and I've been based in Philadelphia since. So since graduating in December of 18, I started working there, and I've just recently moved down to Maryland just because we're fully remote. But ever since then, I was still close by to Villanova's campus. I was living down in Haverford and commuting in, and so this team that I've been on, when I started as an intern, it was kind of growing, and so I just kind of naturally got involved in initiatives that we were doing there, and got kind of involved in the work and really liked it. So because there was a lot going on. Comcast is a very, very big company, which I'll explain in a minute, and there's no shortage of work right now. So it's, I guess, a good position to be in too. So anyways, I kind of started doing sort of like analytics work as an intern. We were kind of assessing all of our real estate opportunities to do on-site solar because it was kind of a hot topic then, and we just wanted to see, where we could do it the most. So we kind of started doing that, and then we started to kind of get ourselves more involved in energy procurement as well. So not just looking at where can we do on-site renewables, but where can we start buying a renewable supply of energy as well. And so that kind of evolved into a job, and again, our team is about a team of 10 people, and we're doing sort of a lot of different things that span over a lot of different areas of sustainability, which I'll get a little bit more into in a minute. But I'm primarily doing sort of project management / analytics work day to day for my job. Okay, so Comcast in general, let me just kind of go through what we do and then sort of how we fit into the sustainability scene. So Comcast Corporation is a bunch of different companies, and so we're primarily a telecommunications company, which just means we are a supplier of broadband internet as well as like video cable, and we actually are now in the mobile business as well. So wireless, broadband internet, and cable, which kind of is labeled as our Xfinity brand. And then we have NBCUniversal, which is another main part of our company. This is everything that you see from shows, films, movies. We have Fast and Furious picture up there. We also have three theme parks, I think going on 4, and we have local cable networks that we operate to within NBCUniversal. Sky is Europe's version of Comcast, basically. They produce content, they make films, movies, and then they also supply internet and cable to folks that need it in many different parts of Europe as well. Comcast Business is just another main part of our company that kind of does Xfinity, except for business to business customers. So we kind of work with other large businesses that need internet solutions across many different stores or something like that. So if there's a McDonald's or something, there's McDonald's on every corner of this country now. So we would work with them to do a couple hundred sites or something like that. This next picture here are our values for the company. 6 of them: community impact. This has been a really big focus of our company, especially right now. And in Philadelphia, you guys may see a lot of work going on with the schools. We're partnering with a lot of schools and low-income families to basically get broadband to those who don't have it. There are unfortunately just a lot of folks who live in Philadelphia and many cities as well that don't have access to great internet, and so that's kind of a mission of our company. We feel like it's a right to have internet, and so we're doing a lot of work in that right now, especially with COVID and everybody shifting to a more work from home based lifestyle as well. And that's also labeled as Internet Essentials. That's getting internet to especially kids who need to be learning right now, and obviously internet is a big piece of that learning. Diversity and inclusion. Comcast believes that having a diverse workforce is just better all around, and that's absolutely true. We come up with better ideas and we come up with better solutions when we have thought and diverse backgrounds. So that's been a huge, again, value to the company as well. Next on the list, sustainability. We'll talk more about that. Military engagement. We work a lot with folks coming out of the military. We have sort of a lot of overlapping skills, especially in the telecommunications world for folks that come out of the military. So we just tend to naturally hire a lot of them, and so they're obviously a great asset for us and for everyone else. So we care special attention to them as well. And then accessibility. Comcast designs products for everyone, and we want to make sure that everyone can use them. That's including people with disabilities. So making sure that our products are available for folks who may be colorblind, or folks who may be deaf or have another disability, using voice technology and other basically technology that's out there. Try to gather all of that and make it a delivered product and useful for folks who wouldn't normally be able to use something like a normal remote. So okay, all right, so sustainability. Again, this is the team that I work on, and so we're primarily working towards these main 4 goals: 100% renewable energy, zero emissions fleet, zero waste, and we have a volunteer hours commitment that we've made for basically environmental work and environmental sort of restoration projects across the country. And so I primarily work in the world of renewable energy. We have a team of 10 people. Some of my colleagues are day-to-day doing work on fleet. So how can we have a massive fleet. I'm sure you guys all see Xfinity trucks driving around everywhere. We have to have them out there to keep our internet up and keep our network reliably running. So a lot of technicians are out in vehicles, and obviously that's a big emissions impact for our company. So we're doing a lot of work in piloting electric vehicles, seeing where it works, and eventually converting our gas fleet over to electric. And so I have a couple of colleagues doing that day to day. I kind of come in and out of that occasionally, but I'm not primarily working on that. And then zero waste. So we want to make all of our facilities zero waste to landfill. And we feed a lot of people every day. If you all have been to Universal Studios, whether that's in California or Orlando, we feed millions of people a year. So the food aspect to our company is very big, and oftentimes we don't really think of Comcast kind of being in the food business too much, but it is. So again, we have a ton of work going on there with NBCUniversal especially, and we're partnering with them to figure out ways how to again reduce our landfill impact, and come up with creative ways to reduce our waste. And then overall, again, we have probably climbing towards 200,000 employees globally now. So that's just a huge asset to make change. And we're really working on the engagement piece as well. It's always hard to get 200,000 people engaged in something, but we're working on it. And again, it's another big main sort of component of our job is engagement and communications and working with people. So again, let me just explain in a couple of minutes here just how we as a company use electricity, and then this is sort of just kind of the nature of my work. So I was kind of explaining this earlier, but obviously we have offices. That scene has changed quite a bit in the past 5 months, but Philadelphia is our headquarters. So we have a ton of office space there. We also have offices all over the country. And so we're using electricity at those places. And so buildings are a big footprint of our carbon emissions. And then aside from buildings, we have a whole cable network that we basically operate and manage. So all of that also uses electricity to power all the signals that get to, your internet signals that get to your home, or your video signals that get to your home. And so we have real estate that, people are in, and then we also have sort of an unmanned real estate footprint where, we have equipment all over roads and telephone poles, and we have, buildings that are sending signals miles and miles away to, to basically connect you to the internet. Theme parks are also a big energy user. We're powering rides, we're powering restaurants there, you name it. And so those are also a big focus of ours as well. And then some of you might have seen Peacock, which is our new streaming service. Well, NBCUniversal launched that a couple of months ago. And so that's going to kind of be a growing source of emissions for us as we, grow users and servers and things like that. So my job is sort of like, okay, how do we, how are we using all this electricity within all of our different business units and things like that? So how can we get that moved over to a renewable source? And some of it, again, can be met by like putting up solar panels on a building that we have. That's sort of the best case scenario, but where we can't do that, we have to think about how are we getting supplied with the electricity, and then how can we create agreements where we're either buying from a renewably powered source like a wind farm or a solar farm, and sort of like how does all that work, and how does the mechanics work of that. And so anyways, this is just a quick example of just a recent project that we've done. So we have a cable network in Houston. So people living in Houston can sign up for Xfinity and get our internet and cable if they want it. So we have equipment basically all over the city where we're powering, signals to homes and businesses and buildings, and we have a footprint there. So our team worked on, converting all of this power that we buy there, and then purchasing it directly from a wind farm that's in Texas. So now we can claim that this whole, this whole region of our cable business is being powered renewably. And so that's just an example of sort of the world that we're in, and how we're sort of reducing the impact of our operations from our business. Lisa, do you want me to pause there and have Ryan do his intro?
Yeah, no, I think that'd
Okay.
be great. Thank you so much for that overview. Yeah. Super interesting.
Sure. 1 second. Good. Sorry.
Great. Yeah, great. All right, Ryan.
Oh, I disappeared. I'm back. Hey, everybody. And thank you, Kevin. That was super interesting. I'm excited to dive in with questions later and learn more. So I guess I'll just kind of start with my story of how I got to where I am today and this kind of climate journey I've been on. It is kind of shocking to me, but I actually, as far as I know, didn't hear about global warming until I was 20, which is like 8 years ago now in 2012. But I remember when I first heard about it, I was like, wow, that sounds like a huge deal. Is that real? Like, is this actually happening? Why aren't people talking about it? And, kind of just slipped through the cracks, and I kept on living. And then within a year, I I studied abroad in Copenhagen, which was very eye-opening on its own. So first off, just a plug for study abroad post-pandemic. If you are thinking about it, definitely do it. If you're not considering it, but definitely encourage you to consider it, because it was just completely mind-blowing to me, that whole experience. But anyway, when I was over there, I saw the Al Gore documentary on Inconvenient Truth. And once I saw that, I couldn't really unsee this issue. I went in and fact checked the things I had questions on, but basically got to the point where I learned enough where I was like, this is a huge deal. And was at this stage where I just had a couple of internships I didn't really care about. One was in like wealth management, one was in insurance. And I was a economics major in the business school at this point as a junior. And so basically the only thing I had decided up to that point was like, I don't want to do those two things, and I need to find something I actually care about and find out about climate change. Can't really unsee this issue. Kind of just smacked me right in the face. Like, I need to work on this. So I basically made a promise to myself to make a career out of eliminating greenhouse gas emissions and reversing global warming. So I picked up a sustainability minor, which was hugely helpful. The two classes that really stick out to me in my mind are, one was this like the climate science class, and had an actual like climate professor who worked in Hawaii and did all this research, and he was, a huge nerd, but like super knowledgeable and could answer basically everything. And had this renewable energy class that was also super interesting, because I had someone who was like fresh out of the industry and also just a super nice person. And so I'll talk about this a little bit, because I think you guys might find it interesting, just the job search. I remember just how stressful it was. And, you apply to a dozen or 24, how many places, and you don't hear back from most of them. So I would strongly encourage folks to reach out to specific companies that you're interested in and find people you have some sort of connection with to just strike up I always ask for like informational interviews, and those led to the best opportunities that came my way. And I eventually, I just kept talking about what I wanted to do, and eventually bumped into an old friend who was like, hey, I'm working at this company now, like, you should definitely check it out. And I think he basically helped me get an interview and got my first job at Enernoc, like Liesl said, after graduating, largely through, just talking all the time about what I wanted to do. And someone eventually is like, oh, you should talk to this person, or, oh, definitely just keep trying, keep your head up. But yeah, so I worked there for 2.5, 3 years, and then decided to go travel for a while, because I was just ready to move on and felt like I had things I wanted to say. At that entry-level job, I was in sales ops. So I was a sales analyst, did a lot in Excel and Salesforce. But basically just felt like I had things that I wanted to say and didn't hear anyone saying them in the way that I thought about them by and large. And so I just decided to start writing. So I started a newsletter, came up with this mission, help reverse global warming as soon as possible, rebuild a healthier, safer, and more just world. And it took a while. After writing for 6 or 7 months, I think I only had 300, maybe 400 people following along, and then just kind of stuck with it, kept getting better at writing, kept building up my own knowledge, because I now have this library of 100 articles I've written. And even if I don't remember something exactly right now, I can go back and reference what I wrote then. And it's I spent a ton of time getting this like the wording right, the facts right, the links right. And so it becomes easier and easier to write over time. And you can also start like following the right people and know where to go for specific questions. And, the network just gets bigger. But yeah, so I kind of just stuck with it, and a year and a half in was closer to 10,000 people. And right now, less than a year later than that, I'm at writing to over 100,000 people in over 100 countries. And so the general gist of what I'm writing about is, to fulfill the mission. Everything is through this lens of how can we help reverse global warming as fast as possible, and do it in a way that centers justice. And writing kind of informally. So like, it's really me speaking. It's all based in fact, but I think a lot of writing and climate communication hasn't had like the emotional side to it, if that makes sense. And connecting with people on this personal level with my thoughts kind of intertwined has really resonated with a lot of people. And, keeping things real about how serious this issue is and how urgent the timeline is. Like, we need to act now. We all need to act together, but also keeping it optimistic and actionable for people. So I like to say I write to inform minds, touch hearts, and inspire action. And so that's kind of the gist of it. There's a lot of I wear a bunch of different hats to have gotten to this point, and lead a team of interns now, starting a podcast soon, just became a nonprofit earlier this year, and working on thanks, Lisa. And starting the grant writing process. Got one so far, going to start crowdfunding soon. So I feel like I've always got my hands full, but in the best possible way. And I'm always continuing to learn and meet just incredible people, because working in this space, I've found that there's so many people that are doing it because they care about this issue. And I really haven't found much competition. It's more of people trying to help each other out, because it's this feeling you're all on the same team. So I guess that's more of just a shout out to a positive of working in this space that you might not find in other industries. Let's see, what else have I jotted down here? Kind of just went on a tangent. I really just do everything through this lens of, okay, big picture, is this action or is this project going to help reverse global warming faster? Is it going to empower more people? Is it going to inform more people? Is it going to build up a community? And some other things here. That's really the gist of it. I would encourage folks just also who are trying to get into this field. If you haven't heard of Project Drawdown yet, I would definitely check that out. It's basically they've compiled the top 100 solutions to global warming. There's a book, there's an updated review about it, but I bring it up because the way I look at it, the science says we need to completely transform the economy in a very short period of time. And Project Drawdown has kind of given you this roadmap of how to do that. And through this research, through that roadmap, you can basically see the industries that are going to be really, really important in the future. And if you care about sustainability but don't know exactly where you want to fit in yet, it's basically this big brochure of climate solutions. And you can kind of see okay, I'm really interested in that, and dig in deeper. Or super interested in this, and then go find companies in that space, and you can start networking that way. And I've written an article about that specifically, how to find a job in sustainability. Had a webinar on it with someone who started a climate, it's called Climate Base. It's basically a climate jobs board recently. So it definitely encouraged people in their search to utilize that resource. But yeah, I could go off on a lot of different directions, but I think I'll bring it back to Liesel until people have like specific questions. That's a bit about my story, where we're at now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for both of you for sharing your stories. They're very interesting. So we have questions coming in now. One that I wanted to direct at Kevin specifically, so the goals that you had listed for Comcast, your sustainability goals, I noticed that there was a specific goal about renewable energy, but do you have other goals around carbon emission in general, or are you just targeting specific sources?
Yeah, good question. So it's in flux right now because what's going on is like Sky, which is like a main part of our company, is like they're a European company. They're super ahead. They're like very they're on track to be carbon neutral. I think I should know this, but I think it's like by 2030 or something like that. And so our corporation is kind of evaluating where we want to be. So initially we put out those 4 goals that I showed you, but right now we're considering kind of wrapping those under a carbon neutrality goal that sort of, is the umbrella of everything. So I guess more to come on that. We're thinking like we're kind of doing some modeling on what we think is feasible right now. But we think, we might come out, maybe with something in maybe 2040 or something. Haven't decided or haven't said anything publicly about it, but that's kind of just where we're aiming towards right now.
Awesome. Great. So you both work on like very different ends of like the influence spectrum, right? Kevin, you work for a large multinational corporation, and Ryan, you write a newsletter for a sizable amount of people, but like a very much a startup growing into a great success. And so I wonder, from your two perspectives, where do you see the ability to make the greatest impact? And Ryan, I mean, I know that's like a big focus of yours, is just figuring out how you can make these actual changes that need to be made. So is it at the individual level, or is it at other levels, and what does that look like in both of your minds?
I can go first. Yeah, I think about this a lot. And I've actually done some research asking experts on like the most effective actions you can take as an individual to help reverse global warming. And these are people like Bill McKibben, Gina McCarthy, James Hansen, Varshini Prakash of the Sunrise Movement, Catherine Hayhoe, several more. And there's like 16 people who I got responses from, and basically their answers boiled down to speaking up. Like, there's this climate silence, we have to break it. We're very social animals, and we influence the people around us more than we realize. Other ones were, so there's 4. The second one was voting. Talk about, I think a huge thing that people can do in Pennsylvania right now is focus on the upcoming election, because Pennsylvania is one of, if not the most important state. So I would strongly encourage students to, if they want to make a difference on this issue, go get involved in encouraging people to go vote. And there's groups like Sunrise Movement or the Environmental Voter Project that you can check out. Holding representatives accountable was a third. And then the fourth, which mainly Bill McKibben and Varshini Prakash were talking about, but they're like, join a movement, collaborate with people. You can't do this by like just going vegan or changing the lights anymore. This needs to happen at a systemic level. And that power happens when we come together and kind of force the issue. And And that's not to say that individual actions don't matter, because they definitely do. We absolutely need both. But you definitely can't just do the personal stuff and think you've kind of done your job anymore. That's like basically out of the mouth of Bill McKibben. We absolutely need to do both of them. And I guess just real quick before I hand it over to Kevin, there's basically this theory of impact that I've somewhat taken. Other people have used this as well for climate action, but there's this theory called the 3.5% rule. And this is research done by Erica Chenoweth. She did it for basically about nonviolent, peaceful protests and how powerful they are in overthrowing like an oppressive regime. And she looked over like the last 100 years, and she said, if only you just need at most like 3.5% of a population's sustained action to kind of win on the issue that you're going for. And, and I've dove deep on this, and in some podcasts, she has said that she believes this issue applies to like smaller scale stuff as well. So, at the community level or in a company. And there's some anecdotal evidence of this. If you look over at like Amazon, for example, they've had a ton of employees who came together, hundreds, probably less than 1% though. And they started demanding that the company start to get aligned with the science. And Amazon still isn't perfect by any means, but since that started, they have made drastic changes in the right direction. And so I see a part of what I'm doing as building that 3.5% around the world. So people trying to change the places that they live and that they work. And, hopefully some people at Comcast are reading this and it'll make your job easier, Kevin. But that's basically how I think about this. Everyone has a role to play and has something to contribute. And we all have our specific and unique skills, experiences, ideas, superpowers. You just got to like figure it out what it is that you're good at and then apply it to this issue and find others to work on it with. So I think I hopefully answered most of the question there. I'll hand it over to Kevin now.
Yeah, no, that was a good answer. I guess I can kind of speak from like a company perspective. It's sort of like Ryan was saying, like the team that I work on are the only people that have like a sustainability job at the company. Everyone else has a different job. There are engineers, there are EHS people, there are communications people, there are finance people. And so no one, no one's only doing sustainability besides us. So we kind of have to make sustainability a part of their role, and they have to obviously, make it themselves as well. So it takes a lot of sort of working together. There's no one size fits all. It requires people kind of working for the ground up, and then also just from a company perspective, leadership's very important on this issue. Comcast has, we haven't taken any bold stances yet. Our leaders haven't, and it's not really the culture of the company either. So we felt like it's been sort of, we've been kind of battling that a little bit, but making progress nonetheless. And I think what you'll find, especially in companies, if you all decide to go to a big company, there's almost like a group of, let's say, 10 or 20 people that are with you all the way, and they're like your point people. And those relationships are, worth gold, because they're able to, influence all the people that work under them. Or if they don't have people working under them, they might just be killer at making change above and below them. So I've found that just working in a very big company, having key relationships with people who really care about the issue is probably the most important thing.
Awesome. Great answers, both of you. So probably more directed to Ryan, but Kevin, feel free to jump in if you have thoughts. And this came up in a previous panel, just this concern over following your passion and your drive to try to make change, but also, the financial risk of potentially doing so, whether it's starting your own, communications outlet, or in this example, they're asking about smaller, like solar companies that are maybe just getting started, need some funding to be successful. So how do you balance that, like the nerves that brings about to try to make that jump? And Ryan, given that I think you made like that ultimate plunge, I think you probably have a pretty good perspective on this.
Yeah, it's definitely not for the faint of heart, I would say. And like, I still don't have financial stability right now, and I've been doing this for 2.5 years. That being said, I am pretty sure I will have it by the spring, which is super excited. But I would think of it this way. Personally, I would, unless you're like very, very passionate about the idea and you've kind of tested it a little bit, and you see that there is an appetite, a demand for it, I would probably try to do it on the side for a little bit before you dive in, like fully, because, most things don't work. And so I did this a little bit. I worked like at the end of my time at Enternoc, I was actually working part-time so I could start this up. And, I negotiated that and made that happen. But it allowed me to build up some financial sustainability before moving back home with my folks to actually get this thing off the ground. And so I was, working part-time, still with my old job, while still getting the groundwork of this going, and giving myself some runway of money. But I mean, it's really just going to depend on how confident are you in the idea and how long are you willing to stick with it. Because like, this has taken me a long time to finally feel confident that it's going to work financially. Like, I've always had the faith, but now I kind of have the empirical data to sort of back it up. And just like, if you are going to make the plunge, just be ready to really stick it out, and also pivot. Like, if something's not working, be ready to adjust. So yeah, I would definitely encourage folks to start their own thing, but to really like think it through, reflect. Like, it's not something to take lightly. And then once you decide to go for it, make sure you have some plan to have the financial capability to keep going. So like, I saved up a bit. I also moved back home. So yeah, I would definitely just encourage folks to think it through and like think very deeply and stress test the idea. But if you're passionate about something, I'm also a complete believer that you can make it happen if you work hard enough and smart enough.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. And we appreciate that you took that plunge and that risk. Yeah, and I'm really happy to see that it's paying off. So how can organizations such as Comcast and small entrepreneurial firms influence partners and suppliers to get on board with sustainability, right? So, Kevin, in particular, you touched on the idea of like influencing colleagues and employees to make changes. How do you get your partners and suppliers to get on board? And, Ryan, I'm sure this is also part of your goal of getting other organizations to follow the sustainability way.
Yeah. So a theme of sustainability, like I think Ryan's been bringing up quite a bit, is just it's a communal effort. So sustainability is not going to work if one supplier wants it and the buyer doesn't. when you do sustainability projects, you end up working a lot more with whatever you're working on than you probably want to. Projects can take 2 years when you thought it'd take a month or two. So, I think the real way to get that sort of synergy there is really understanding what the needs are from sort of both ends. Like, for me and for the work I do, we've spent a lot of time with our utilities and our electric suppliers, telling them what we need and telling them what we want. And then they've been doing the same. And so we're really just honing in on where is that common ground and where's that bridge where we can really, work together on. And sustainability, there's a lot of different aspects of it, just with its impacts and things like that. So making sure that everybody's aware of what's going on, and both sides, both parties are in agreement with maybe it's a new product that uses less energy, but maybe it costs a little bit more to make. So you got to kind of figure out what are all the trade-offs and what are all those levers that you can kind of pull to ultimately end up bringing something to fruition, basically.
Ryan, did you want to speak to that at all?
I can give my 2 cents, but I haven't been on the ground doing this like Kevin has. On the ground, rather. Yeah, I mean, just from what I've read, it seems like the big players like Walmart is an example that comes to mind. Like they have so much purchasing power and so many people supply them, and that, they could go in different directions if they wanted to. Like if someone's that big, you can kind of just, I don't know this for sure. Like I said, I'm not in the space, but like setting standards, and you tell your suppliers as ahead of time, like we've set this goal. It's a science-based goal. I know there's this fantastic initiative, science-based targets, to actually get companies to pledge to do these things in alignment with the Paris Agreement. But if you kind of talk to your supply chain and say, hey, we're doing this, and as our supplier, you need to get your emissions straightened out too. And if not, like we might have to go in a different direction at some point. I just think that economic pressure and communicating that and setting those standards and expectations will start to move things along a little bit. But I mean, it really all comes down to communicating, like getting more people on board, like Kevin said, finding those sustainability champions, and then working together to actually make things happen. Structural change is really hard and slow, and it doesn't get done unless a lot of people are working together on it.
Awesome. Thank you both. So one last question before we wrap up here, and I've been trying to end all of our panels on this. Any student that's graduating this year and then probably in the near future is probably graduating into a market that's historically awful, a job market that's historically awful. So, I think it's one thing to decide that this is something that you want to make a career in, and follow your passion. But it's also another to try to navigate just the job market system, especially straight out of college. You're faced with different challenges, being just a student. And so if you have any suggestions, especially, you did this recently, of how to kind of navigate that and succeed in trying to find your sustainable career goal, would be great.
You want to go first, Kevin?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So I'd say 3 things. Number 1, keep things in context. Everybody's going through this crazy uncertain time right now. And, I work with a lot of my colleagues are parents. So they might just not be available for most of the day because they're figuring out how to get their kids through all this and doing all this stuff. So I think everyone is feeling uncertain right now for sure. And that's natural. But we're kind of reinventing, the workforce right now. We're figuring out ways how to work around it. Everybody's just figuring out, we're building the bridge as we go. And so keep that in mind. Everybody's kind of faced with a different part of this, this pandemic right now. Use this time to get other skills that you normally wouldn't have time for. So, a lot of my colleagues I know have done a lot of software tutorials and things like that, and kind of, harnessed up their toolkit in that way. And it's really a good time to sort of, get some more toolkits or some more tools in the toolbox there for a future job. And it kind of keeps you busy with things. So you tend to think a little bit less about what's going on right now. And then, lastly, just find that routine that works for you. No one's ever done this routine before. So everybody's going to be, comfortable in different ways. And, it's going to be unique for you. So routine can, always be good. It can sometimes be bad if it's too much of a routine. But if sort of when your productive times of the day are, for me, that's the mornings. Definitely not the evenings. I tend to work earlier in the mornings than I do in the evenings now, just because I feel like my brain's working better. But you kind of start to pick up on these things and you figure out, how to use it all to your advantage. So again, everybody's feeling this uncertain time, but figure out how to learn some new things that you would normally never do, and figure out that routine, because that's going to be really important as we sort of continue to be working in our dorms or working remotely. So that's my gist.
Yeah, I would definitely agree, especially with that first part that really resonated with me. Just being aware that everyone is facing a difficult time right now. Obviously, some far, far more than others, but keeping everything in context, like Kevin said. I would also just reiterate how, it's going to be really tricky right now. Like the job market stinks. There's no other way to say that. And so I think the most important things you can do, and hopefully you find a job along the way, but whether you do or not, I think doing these things will increase the chances that you get one and hopefully accelerate the time it takes to get one. And that is to actually take the time to reflect. What is it that you want to do? Get specific within which industry, which companies do you want to pursue? And that's not to say you can't search wider than that, but I believe if you narrow it down that much, that's going to separate you from other people. Because I've interviewed a bunch of people at this point, and you can tell who is very passionate about this. And when someone has a why and they tie it into that specific company's mission and values, that goes a very long way. So if you can take the time to reflect and figure that stuff out, that's super helpful. I would also say to keep building relationships. So if you've done that reflecting, which companies you're most interested in, just go on LinkedIn or something, talk to your friends and family, figure out if you have any connections to anyone at that company. And then just ask for an informational interview. Kevin and I just talked about our stories of how we got to where we are today. Pretty much everyone loves talking about that, and people are very nice. So just try to hop on the phone, get a call set up, start building that relationship, and eventually you can figure out if there are any job openings and opportunities that might be a good fit. The last thing I would say is to start building up a skill or work on a project on the side, something that you can talk about that shows you're actively improving yourself. And if it relates to what you want to do, that's obviously way, way better. But showing that you're doing something and bettering yourself and have some sort of drive I think is very helpful. You're building skills already, shows you're hungry. And then I guess very last thing, I gave this a shout out earlier, but specifically for climate jobs, climatebase.org is fantastic. And they're only getting bigger. There's only more climate people posting on that. So definitely check that out. And then there's one other one, which did a summer and fall. These are more internships. So I don't think these are paid, but if you're looking for that experience and to start building up your network and experience and skill set and all that, it's called the Keeling Curve Prize is the organization. And they have this Constellations program is what they call it. So if you Google that, I'm sure it'll come up, but that's just another avenue to get connected to organizations working in this space and potentially get your foot in the door somewhere.
Those are both really great answers. And both provide similar but also different feedback from what we got from other panelists. So that's really, really helpful. Thank you both. And so we'll just end by saying that I'm sure both Kevin and Ryan would be interested in connecting with all of you on LinkedIn. So take this opportunity to start that network, to start build that out. You also feel free always to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I've been doing my best to try to build out a network as well to help our students connect with different companies that they're interested in. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here tonight, and especially to our panelists for sharing their stories and their experiences with us. So virtual thank you to our panelists.
Thank you, Lisa. This has been great. I hope people found it useful. I know I had a good time, so
Likewise.
awesome.
Yeah, please reach out. Lisa, feel free to share our emails or share my email with anyone. So definitely would love to talk to anyone if they're interested.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the night.
Thank you.
You got it. Take care, everybody.